There is a quiet pain that many men carry, not because they're weak, but because they were never taught how to feel safely. Today, we're talking about forgiveness not as letting someone go or off the hook, but as a way to reclaim your power, your body, and most importantly, your sense self. This is a conversation about healing without shame, and I welcome you all to Mind Over Masculinity, where the space where we have honest conversations about men's mental health and emotional health without pretending. So today I'm joined by someone special, Shannon Curtis, founder of Angel Goddess Healing and creator of a forgiveness based healing approach rooted in lived experience and deep personal transformation. So, folks, for all of you who are tuning in today, we are exploring how men can begin to heal, especially when pain has been buried for years within their true self, and how Shannon's forgiveness method offers a path forward that does not require any sort of numbing. So. Shannon, it's a pleasure to have you here on the show, and I'm actually quite excited to know about what is that secret sauce in that method that we are going to talk about today. So it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Wonderful. Likewise. And before we get into the kind of uh, methods or frameworks that I just told you about, I want to start with your story, as in your journey. Like, what was the first moment that forgiveness that showed you that forgiveness was not about weakness, but uh, somewhere related to survival?
Yeah, so I would say my first moment of really having forgiveness and understanding it is dealing with some trauma, sexual trauma I had as a 4-year-old, and really, really understanding that and seeing that it happened for me and not to me. And in that moment that I flipped it and saw that and had this moment spiritually with the perpetrator and understanding that it was done for me, for my soul's evolution, for my growth, I really understood what forgiveness was. And I think what happens is we don't really know the concept of it. We're told we need to forgive to be a good person, but we never really get down to the understanding of it. And so I discovered forgiveness is forgiving the pain and that shame back to your perpetrator, and forgetting is actually forgetting your power back. And so it's very much opposite of what we're taught and told. And so I
Yeah.
found that forgiveness is the most selfish thing I can do for me.
Yeah, that's a very, a real distinguishing between forgetting and forgiveness that you just talked about. And because I think, um, there is a strong belief, especially among men, that forgiveness, means excusing what happened or minimizing the harm, right? But from your experience, what do most of the people misunderstand about forgiveness in general?
I think that most people take it and make it about the other person. So we're hurt
Mm.
by someone and we immediately make it all about that and why they did to us and da 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 da. Our ego kind of gets in the way. And so what happens is we hold on to that because we don't want to forgive them, because if we forgive them, then we're saying it's okay. And so that's where I try to help people and see it. It's actually not that. When you are in your anger and you're sitting in that, you're holding on to that pain that was passed on to you, and so that's what I work with a lot of my male clients, is really getting in touch with that feeling. And that's what you said in the beginning, is that the masculine sometimes is not told how to feel and to told that it's okay to feel. Then it's actually
Absolutely.
very important to feel. And so the forgiveness is feeling that pain, but then letting it go and giving it back to the person.
Yeah, right. Again, when I hear about forgiveness in general, I think about maybe not holding grudges against the other person, right? Not having a very hard spot for that other person in my heart, right? And it's not about absolution. Right? It's about, I believe, releasing ownership of pain is what you're suggesting that never belonged to you in the first place. So, that brings me to this. Since you have openly spoke about addiction, depression, anxiety, And you also said you have, unresolved. I mean, sorry, since you said you were a victim of childhood abuse as well. I mean, when those wounds, would you say, are not addressed, what patterns do you see showing up again and again and again in adult life? I mean, just to understand how important it is to overcome that moment of whatever that what may be, like grief, or could be some sort of abusive nature in you that was engraved in you when you were a child, and so forth and so on, I mean.
Mhm. There's so many things that play out, and that's why I work so much with inner child work of healing that, because I tell people, let's say you're in a bad toxic relationship. Sometimes it's never about that. It's about maybe that mother wound that you didn't get. Maybe you were abandoned by your mother when you were younger, a little boy. And so what happens is that whole life you're trying to heal that wound outside of yourself with other people. And maybe you're attracting those women that maybe have that abandonment thing, and so it keeps playing out, and you're like, "Why am I attracting the wrong woman?" Well, you're actually not. You're attracting the woman that's supposed to help you move you through that pain. And once you address that pain and you find that no one can really abandon you and healing that inner child, you will see that shift in the women and the relationships that you attract. And so what happens is, just like you said, you don't deal with it, it follows you. And so we have to do the opposite. We have to literally, in order something's chasing you, the only way to make it disappear is literally to turn around and look at it, is to actually look at something.
Absolutely.
That's the only way to make it disappear.
Absolutely. I love that honesty in the words you shared. I mean, not to run from it, right? And I mean, it is powerful to hear how kind of the body and the mind as well reacts to someone what's chasing you in a negative way. I mean, but because avoidance, I believe, may feel like strength. Uh, for many would agree to that, but as life goes on, you would realize that it often becomes a quiet prison in yourself. So, um, Shannon, for men who are listening to this right now and asking themselves that, they're kind of fine, and they're kind of functional, and they're kind of okay, how does unprocessed pain usually show up day to day for you? So, maybe from your client perspective, or something that you find common in the different scenarios.
I think definitely, as we're talking about the masculine, is being okay to feel, is being okay to feel. So we just stuff it down. And a lot of clients I work with, they stuff it down and they tough it out. So like you said, it's a man to like to avoid. No, actually the hardest thing to do as a male is actually to be vulnerable and cry and to be soft. And so that's what happens a lot working with my male clients, is tapping into their feminine side of it. And we all have that. I have a masculine side that I tap
Yeah,
into,
absolutely.
and that's that doer. My feminine is the intuition and the thinking and the feeling and all that. But the actual masculine is the doing. And there is a purpose for that. But I think we're off balance as a culture. And so we really need to bring in some more nurturing, mothering side. And what I find is most men, they just want to be seen and heard by a woman and understood and loved unconditionally. And it goes back to a lot of that mother wounds. And sometimes we're just not taught what that looks like. And so I would say it just keeps showing up of not really being in touch with our feelings.
Absolutely. And I think I totally agree with the fact that you shared about the feminine side in a male. Because I think if you see or look for any great relationships, right, that exist, it's a balance of masculine and feminine, right? So obviously, I'm zooming out the picture a bit, and I'm seeing two people together as an entity that balances each other off. That I believe it is very important to have that balance within the individual self as well, that you mentioned. And I mean, I'm curious to know, how do you tap into that feminine energy, being a male? How do you get to that point?
Yeah, well, I first think, and just like my forgiveness method, the first thing is creating a space, a container. That's that thing you have to feel safe enough to feel open enough to where you can feel your feelings. And so what happens is set in settings. Where is that? Is that in a therapy office? Is that in a support group? Is that with your loved one? Is that with a coach like me? However it is, it's creating that space to where you can feel like you can let those walls down without judgment. That is a big one. If you feel judged at all, we are not going to open up our feelings. And so that's what I really work with my clients is there's nothing you can tell me that I'm going to judge. Now I will be curious and I ask why because curiosity is what sets us free. It's not what kills us. It's you have to be curious, why am I acting this way?
No,
And so I
absolutely.
think that you just really have to be safe with somebody to open up.
Absolutely. And just to add a few points, I would say so, I think curiosity should be the default setting of any individual, right? Be it a man or a woman, because we often understand the what perspective of it, right? And it's kind of like a funnel, right? So the top layer is the what, then comes why. And I would still say a lot of people manage to get to that point, but it's usually the bottommost part, which is the how part of things, right? Where most people get stuck, 90%. Give you take an aggregate number that is very practical in everywhere you look, right? So, Shannon, I'm curious as to if you talk about the forgiveness method itself, when someone feels overwhelmed by their past, or it could be, maybe they're not holding um, accountable for things that they should, or maybe holding any kind of grudges with the other person. So, whatever scenario it is in, I want to ask you something practical related to the forgiveness method. Is that where does this process actually begin? What is the step one? So, if you could explain in a grounded human way, a kind of a so there could be now n number of scenarios, right? But what do you tell your clients to begin with, no matter what the scenario?
But once they come to me and we create that safe container, we have to name the wound. We have to name it
Mm,
first. We have to feel safe enough to say it, and then once we have to say it, but what I try to help is by saying it, but eventually we're going to take the emotion and the feeling out of it. So I can talk about, yes, when I was 4, I was molested. Yes, I had addiction. Yes, I've had miscarriages. I've had all these things, but that's what's
mm,
happened to me. It's just a story. It's not who I am. And those were all lessons taught for me. And so that's that thing of starting with gratitude. People get stuck. Where do I start with? Where do I even begin? So I name the wound. This happened to me. Well, let's start with gratitude because once you're able to flip it and flip the script and say, no, this happened for me, not to me, you change from a victim to empowerment of, oh, this happened for me. What am I supposed to learn out of this? Being curious. Why did this happen to me? So many times a lot of people happen to me because I'm bad. That's what we think. And so I really start with the forgiveness of self first, because if you can't forgive yourself for all the bad things, how could you possibly expect to forgive somebody else? And so it really starts with the unconditional love and the gratitude and being willing to find the good in everything that happens in your life. Every bad thing that's happened to me in my life, I know for a fact it's actually happened for me and for my soul's growth.
big, big words, Shannon. And I think that is the key, that mindset of not, I mean, trying to go by that victim card, right? Because let's be honest, if something bad happens to me, the only way, like you said, of how I can tap out of that is to literally face that fear and, step out to that discomfort zone, right? And face whatever that issue is. Because I think the process of healing itself is not linear, right? And someone listening to this might be delusional, asking themselves, okay, so there was maybe, something bad that happened to their life that apparently appeared to have solved, but now it's back. So it could be any kind of scenario, and when that old pain or whatever you would name that, right, resurfaces, or people feel that they have regressed, how do you guide them to stay on that path, connected to the process that we just talked about, instead of giving up?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the curiosity and not judgment. Don't judge why you're feeling this way. Let's look at it. Maybe there's something, like you said, I think things keep coming back to our lives, and what happens, these little loops, and some people call it karmic loops, and they keep coming till you fully understand it. But what I try to do is shorten that loop. And so maybe the first time it took me a long time, it's like a lap. And then maybe the next time it's a little bit less and it's shorter and shorter. And that's that path of enlightenment, of getting it so fast to where you're instantly in the moment. Someone cuts you off and you're just pissed off driving. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, thank you. Because that taught me to slow down. Thank God I'm not that kind of driver. Whatever it is, it's just that instant. You can instantly find the gratitude in everything. And the biggest thing I tell people is sometimes the gratitude of people hurting you is thank you for showing me who I choose not to be. That's it.
Mm.
That's all it is. Sometimes that's all it can be is thank you. I don't ever want to be that driver. I don't want to be that person that cuts off. I want to be mindful of other people. Thank you for reminding me because I'm sure I've done that. That's that moment of that shift of just being curious why it happened versus just like, oh, whatever, and just going out
And not
and
taking any lesson out of it.
yeah, yeah, just
Yeah.
stopping and being in the moment and being like, what is being shown to me?
Yeah, wow, I love that, honesty and the practical approach to this. And now, if I trace back to the first question, which was around, I believe, something around how would you distinguish between forgiveness and, forgetting? I think
Mhm.
for someone who's listening to this right now, you have to trace it back to, again, awareness, curiosity, right? Because honestly, healing does not take this linear form. Like, I just asked Shannon right now. Now, it is very important to be in that curious state that, Shannon, you talked about, right? So that you can literally act as a catalyst, and, try to find and steer the direction of your ship yourself, right? And that is what I believe is the hardest part to do, since healing is not linear. So thank you, Shannon, for this amazing, practical, and very grounded conversation about forgiveness in a uh, man's idea what forgiveness should look like. And I mean, that is the exact opposite of what we just talked about today. So, for what I'm taking away from this conversation is that healing does not ask men to become someone new, but I believe it asks them to return to who they were before the pain taught them to hide. And yeah, that is something I actually want my listeners to take away from this conversation as well. So do you have anything to add here, Shannon, on top of this?
I love that. And just to jump off on that of that is the strongest thing you can do and the most brave and masculine thing you can do is step into your love and your light. And we're taught the opposite of it. And I find the most attractive thing that a man can do for me is being willing to look at his wounds and heal. And so that's my hope for, and prayer for any men that are listening to this is to be brave enough to start that healing journey and to know you're worth it.
Thank you. Thank you for setting up the benchmark, Shannon, I would say, of how a healthy masculine should operate in today's world. And folks, that would be all for today. And, before we wrap off, would love to ask Shannon that for listeners who feel ready to explore this side of work and learn more about your approach, Shannon, where can they find you at?
Yes, they can find me at my website, www.angelgoddesshealing.com, and I do a free healing consultation. So if anyone's curious about anything, I have other people that work with me. So if it's not me, I have other people, men. And so just feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and you can go on my website and take a look.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for providing that freebie option as well to everyone who's listening. And folks, I would be including the details in the show notes for you, so you can check them out anytime at your own convenience. And that would be all for today on Mind Over Masculinity. And I just want to take a moment to thank everyone for joining us today on this very unconventional side of healing in general and in a man's um, ideal world. And if this conversation stirred something in you, let it, because that was the whole intention, right? You do not need to, start fixing stuff tonight. I mean, awareness itself is a form of courage indeed. But anyway, thank you for listening and tuning in on Mind Your Masculinity, and share this episode with someone who might need permission to heal. And remember that strength is not the absence of pain, it is the willingness to face it with honesty. Until next time, I'll see you in the next one.